Los Angeles area, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Hartford, New York, DC, and now Pittsburgh is my home. And moving to these different places, you know, you got to start sometimes all over. You know, you've got to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this place? And with each place, I was going to each place for different reasons, for school, for jobs, for different opportunities, for assignments. And when I moved to Pittsburgh, I came here actually to do something very specific, something very particular, something more challenging, honestly, than I had anticipated. So I was contacted in Atlanta in 2010. By Todd Owens. How many of you know him? Yeah. He found me on LinkedIn. Mental note for anybody looking for a job. I was working for an organization called the American Institute for Managing Diversity at the time. And he said, I want to talk to you. We're doing something interesting in diversity in Pittsburgh. I'm thinking, okay, great. You know, yeah, get an intern on that. We'll, you know, talk about it and on. I think it was a Saturday. We started talking about an initiative in which they were looking for a CEO for. And what he explained, he actually set up a meeting for me and some of the then board members. And what they said is Pittsburgh has an economic development problem. Our economic development problem has been the years and decades of population decline. The decline has been a result of, actually the region's been in decline since post-World War II, but hit its peak, this overwhelming, devastating peak as a result of the loss of jobs in the 70s and 80s, where you had people leaving the region at a net loss of about 50,000 people. The devastation of that is, hits generations, okay? You have people who leave and then they tell their kids, don't go back, there's nothing for you there, because it was something that took decades to recover from, this loss of jobs. They had unemployment rates that were unparalleled in other parts of the nation, and Pittsburgh was almost experiencing this by itself. There were other Rust Belt places that were experiencing this. And then what happened, there was this whole kind of left behind kind of feeling. You know, you think about when people leave at those numbers and leave behind a whole group of people, what do the left behind people feel, right? As they are trying to survive all of this change. To the region's credit, its leadership came together to rebuild its economy. Now, rebuilding your economy is not something that happens overnight. I believe they say it took about 30, 40 years, and I would say a lot of people would say that they're still working on it. But to the leadership, the credit of the leadership, the investment in infrastructure, the investment in various sectors, startups, tech sector, health ed, finance, banking, energy, and some others, they brought back a more diversified array of job opportunities. There was even some investment in the environment, and we can all critique about, you know, how the additional things that need to be done. But one thing that didn't happen, that still needs to happen, is the bringing back of the people, okay? So if you look at this graph, can you all see it behind me? I'm gonna say the top line is the population line. So what you're looking at, this purple line shows a decline in people in the region over time. The green line is the growth of the labor force. You see grow, peak, dive, come back up. The last line is employment line. And the challenge for us, as you see employment growing, the labor force sort of leveling out, the population declining, what we have coming is a bit of a cliff, right? Which means if you don't have the people, the labor force for the increasing jobs that you have, it becomes too difficult to fill a position because you don't have the labor force to meet the growing talent demands. If you don't have the labor force to meet your growing talent demands, then you have an employer that says, you know what, it's too difficult to fill this position here. I might take it and stick it in Cleveland. I did that to get a rise out of you. I was just in Cleveland actually yesterday. They're very nice people. So, you know, and that is an economic development problem. Part of our issue also is that because of this population decline we experience, the region lost its young people. So the region has become older. You all probably know this. We are one of the oldest regions in the country. We have one of the oldest workforces in the country. So we have these huge looming retirements facing us, and we don't have enough people in the workforce actually to diminish that delta. We have a gap in our labor. We have a labor shortage gap. That gap can't be diminished overnight. You have to plan for meeting and diminishing and addressing that gap. So let me talk to you about what happens when you have this great outmigration of people in the region. When people leave the region, the rest of the migration that is occurring throughout the US doesn't happen here. It passes over us because the reputation is that there is an opportunity here. The Census Bureau says that people move basically for three key reasons. They move for a job opportunity, they move for housing affordability, and they move for a familial related kind of reason, right? How many of you are new to the region? Few of you? Did you move here for a job opportunity? You move here for family? Some of you? Affordability, housing affordability? Oh, one person, okay. So, you know, I wonder if that covered everybody. But so if that's not here, you know, and the biggest reason is a job opportunity. If it's not here, then you don't come here. If your affinity is not here, you're apt not to come either. That is, you look into the region and you're like, okay, there's nobody here that looks like me. How successful am I going to be here? Who am I going to connect with? How am I going to make some friends? Where are my social networks going to come from? Am I going to be happy here, right? So what we have seen happen as a result of the decline in population here, the loss of jobs, is this kind of thing. And it's still, we're getting a little better at it, but slowly as a region. But Pittsburgh, I'm just going to show you these graphs really quickly. And I want you to follow the red bar. And you tell me what you observe. This is the Asian American representation in Pittsburgh. These other regions that are identified here, can you see them? Cincinnati, Cleveland, St. Louis, Kansas, Indianapolis, Charlotte, Milwaukee, Richmond, Denver, Detroit, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, Boston. These are all regions that we constantly benchmark the region against on all kinds of economic indicators. And one of the indicators that we measure ourselves against relative to these other regions is our population, right? Because we are essentially regions in competition with each other for talent. So, what do you notice here? You don't have to say it out loud, just watch. What do you notice here? Multiracial representation, increasing demographic group, people who identify by multiple identities. What do you notice here? African American representation. What do you notice here? Latino representation. We have a challenge as a region. You cannot grow your population unless you are able to attract a diversity of people. The entire nation grew, the population of the nation grew as a result of the growth of our immigrant populations. Without the growth of our immigrant populations, we would have had population decline in the US. If Pittsburgh is going to address its economic development challenge, the growth of its population, we have to be able to attract a diversity of people. But the challenge is, as I mentioned, people who are contemplating whether they're going to move into a place, first look into the place to say, is there anybody there like me? Am I going to be successful? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to pick up my family and move them to it's a big decision, right? It's a big change. And what do we say about change? Only people comfortable with change, as I understand it, are wet babies, right? So if you're going to make that change, you want a degree of certainty associated with it. Pittsburgh needs the change in order to ensure its long-term economic competitiveness and actually viability. Our own economic prosperity is dependent upon us furthering this change effort that we need to have happen in our community. So what does this mean that we need to do? Oh, sorry, I mentioned the immigrant. We're last on that too. So what does this mean for the region? What do we want to look like? Who's responsible? What's the work? When I was invited to come up here, having lived in a number of very diverse places, also very larger places, I did the same thing. I'm like, I don't know anybody in Pittsburgh. I don't have any family in Pittsburgh. I used to live in Philadelphia, so I took the Google map, and I started there. And how you can just sort of move it. And it's not like I didn't know where Pittsburgh was. It's just it's that far from Philadelphia. From the thing that you're comfortable with. You're trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to build my network? That kind of thing. And then so I knew what they were asking this person who would be filling this position to do. So what did I do? I took a dive into the demographic data. I'm like, what? So why did I take the position? I took the position because the leadership of the community and the board members that were talking to me, they were actually white men. And they said something like, look, we're going to mess this up. We're going to step on our toes. We'll be politically incorrect. I said, that's all right. Let's just get it all out there. Let's just talk about it so I know what I'm signing up for, right? But what they basically said is, we know we have an economic development problem. We know that diversity and inclusion is a path to addressing our economic development problem. We have got to do something about it. We have created this organization as leaders of our community to create a kind of intervention, something that will shake us up, that will get something started around the issue of diversity. Not to say that other things good were not happening in the community with the social justice and civil justice and community organizing and community development. There were things going on, but they felt that something else was needed. And so this is what we want you to consider coming to do. And ultimately, it took me a minute, because, I'm doing the calculus in my head. But ultimately, I signed up because I was captivated by the fact that the leadership of this community had identified that there was this issue and that diversity and inclusion was a means to their economic development aspirations. I found that compelling. That's what I signed up for. That's what I came here to do. Now, I will tell you, the reality of actually executing on that is tough, right? Because why? Because people have trouble with change. And if you have trouble with change, you're going to have difficulty with diversity. Because some of what has to happen are some behavioral changes. You think about how we come together in this community. Most of the people in the Pittsburgh region are from Pittsburgh. They already have their relationships. They already have their network. You know, so I'm a recruiter, I'm going to hire, I already know all these people that are interested in the position. This person is a safer bet, I know this school, I know his parents, I know that school, you know, so I'll just hire this person. I already have my friends, I don't need to invite anybody new to my little friendship network, so, you know, it's like, how do you make a new friend? When I first got here, I have to tell you, the lights would go out in the office, I'd be sitting there, everybody's gone, you know, and nobody invited me out for a drink. You know, I come from Atlanta, I have a big old hanging out kind of town, and the other person I had just met had moved here from New York by way of Germany or something, and he'd call me up and say, so what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. He's like, let's go meet, you know, we both live downtown, let's go meet at the Westin Hotel. And try and figure out what we're going to do. And we would just be picking up people on the street, and what I found is that, you know, to make a new friend, I ended up connecting more often with people who were new here than people who were from here. Even in my own demographic group, you know? So I called one of my board members and I said, okay, I'm gonna need some help. I'm gonna need some help. I gotta make some friends. I mean, for me, for Melanie. The other thing I realized is I needed to figure this out because I'm supposed to be the welcome center for newcomers. You know, I need to figure out a strategy. So I ended up living the strategies that we actually execute at Vibrant Pittsburgh. So we have an attraction strategy. I know some of you want to know what we do. We actually leave the region and find the demographic groups that are underrepresented. We go to different conventions and cultural festivals and things like that. We use the web and social media and everything else to go to the demographic and promote the brand of Pittsburgh, to reposition it in the minds of groups that are underrepresented currently here in the region. We have a whole host of what we call connection accelerating activities. Things that are larger and smaller gatherings where people can begin to make a connection with somebody else, to build that friendship network. If you cannot build a friendship network, a social network, you're less likely to gain accesses to the resources, the people, the networks you need that lead to a job, that lead to finding the right schools, that lead to finding the human resources that you may need, to the doctors that you want. I mean, you think about it. How did you find your doctor? How did you find the right store that can give you the shoes that you need? That, you know, just little basic things. Although the social networking, I cannot overstate the importance of that. Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce did a study looking at retention in their community. And they found that a newcomer that wasn't embedded in the community, within 3 months of arriving, would begin to make a plan to be someplace else. We got 3 months to make a connection with a newcomer, a boomeranger, right? Now, the other thing is we just embarked on a diversity survey. We released the diversity survey. We had a press conference, the whole 9 yards, back in January. And one of the things that I invite you, encourage you, I hope you take a look at it. One of the other things that we found is the difference in the impression between people who are from here in a majority position, which in Pittsburgh would be, if you're white, then you are in the overwhelming majority. You represent somebody do the math, there's like 13% of the population is diverse. So the reverse of that, Mike, is 80 what?
87.
Thank you, 7? Thank you. 87% white, okay? So you have a feeling, you see Pittsburgh as more diverse than your diverse counterparts. Isn't it funny how we can both be living in the same place, but living it differently, see it differently? That has implications for our community. If we don't see it, we're less likely to do something about it. Okay, so we do need to be able, so we need to see this. The other thing is a critical point is most of the people that took that survey are actually from Pittsburgh. It's a reflection of just our population. Most of the people in Pittsburgh are from Pittsburgh. And so most of the African Americans that took the survey are actually from Pittsburgh, grew up in Pittsburgh. But we also found that among every other demographic group, African Americans don't even feel welcomed, like they belong in their own community. This is something that we have to work on. It will be a frustration and a drag on the progress of Pittsburgh if we don't figure out, as a community, how to address what is a lingering, I think, racial disparity and inequitable situation. It is, the data actually was sobering and disappointing. And we have some work to do. Now, I'm not gonna say, are we really worse than other places? In some of the studies relative to African Americans, we have some work to do. But regarding welcoming, is somebody standing at the foot of the George Washington Bridge in New York with open arms waiting to hug you as you cross the highway? No, but Pittsburgh is trying to do something distinguishable, right? We are trying to be the most welcoming place for people of all backgrounds in the world. That's the differentiator that we want. We want to be the region of choice for all people. If we're going to do that, this whole discussion around the tale of two cities, the haves, the have-nots, the invisibility of our immigrant populations in the region, our segmenting, fragmenting, in different neighborhoods and communities, our failure to interact and welcome new people, all that has to stop. All that has to stop. We have to become comfortable with change, but we have to view change in the context of the promise of change. That there is something promising there for us if we're willing to lean into it. Now, pictures. I was trying to leave everybody with a little bit of inspiration. And I can't tell you how hard it was to find a diversity of people in pictures in Pittsburgh. But I went to the Cultural Trust website and looked at pictures from one of their jazz live festivals. Have any of you been? And what I found was this amazing, okay, that was a Steeler game. I threw that in there. I thought I would get points. What I found, and this is the Lunar New Year Festival, the first Lunar New Year parade at Squirrel Hill. Did anybody go? Yeah, was that amazing? And what I found was, in searching for those pictures, that sometimes you need to sort of fake it before you make it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we can, just with some pictures, kind of project the place and the thing that we want to be and where we want to get to, right? We can kind of forecast it before we actually get there. And I'm wondering if we do that, it will cause us to even act differently. Do you know what I mean? So you think about it, I can't find a picture of a diverse group of people. Maybe I need to go somewhere where there's a diversity of people. Maybe that'll put me in a different place where I actually expand my connections and my network. And I want to tell you one statistic which you may be aware of. But we mentioned that the nation is changing. The demographic trends in the nation are changing. Do you know that currently there are more babies that are born that are babies of color than there are any other babies, right? So we are, in fact, from the baby standpoint, a minority-majority nation already. They say that to get good with change or to feel comfortable with change requires some preparation for the change. I think that we have to stop denying the fact that the nation is changing and get about the business of preparing for the change. What compelled me to come to Pittsburgh was that the leadership of this community was trying to be about the business of getting prepared for the change. They realized that there was a compelling economic development case for Pittsburgh moving to this next century, utilizing interventions of every kind of means to prepare itself for the diversity that it needed in order to sustain its long-term economic viability. Whose responsibility is that? Whose responsibility is it for us to prepare for this change? Right, all of us. One of the things that really did concern me, and I won't tell you where on the planet I was when I heard this, but somebody was talking about diversity, and they said something really needs to be done. And somebody really needs to do something. And I'm looking, I'm like, well, what about y'all? What about us? So I leave here, or in my talk, and I understand I can take some questions, with leaving you with this. What is the doing work? If everybody expects vibrant Pittsburgh to change the demographics of the Pittsburgh region, you guys are gonna send me back to Atlanta. I'll be woefully unsuccessful. But if we think we can do this together, if we each can make a new friend, as they say in the Dignity and Respect campaign, if we can reach beyond our current network to consider a new person for a promotion, a job opportunity, to include in your social network, we could really do this. Matter of fact, not only could we do this, but we would serve as an example to the entire world. There are regions around the world wrestling with the issue of how to grow the diversity of their places, how to not leave groups behind in their economic transformation. We could lead the world if we do this. This is what's coming, and these are the people we need to prepare for. Thank you.